My cousin falsely accused me of SA, and now, after nearly 10 years, my family is finally reaching out to me. Growing up, I was in what was probably one of the most normal households you could imagine. Parents who worked tirelessly but still managed to care for me and my 3 older sisters. We weren't extremely close as a family, but we never had any issues either. The same went for my extended family. They lived a few hours away, and we would see each other during summer holidays or Christmas, always getting along well. As we grew older, naturally, we drifted apart, each of us caught up in our own lives. I am now 31 years old. Back in 2014, when I was 22 and attending university, I received a phone call from my mother that completely turned my world upside down. I remember hesitating to answer at first because I was gaming with friends, but she called again immediately afterward. In our family, if someone called twice in quick succession like that, it was a sign something serious had happened, like someone had died. When she called again, I excused myself from my friends and answered, only to be met with chaos, people arguing, crying, voices overlapping. It sounded like she went into another room and closed the door before she spoke. I simply asked what was going on, and I heard her crying. My memory of that conversation is hazy, but she asked if I had anything to confess concerning my cousin on my mom's side, who was 7 years younger than me, 15 at the time. I hadn't seen her in years, and I was clueless about what she was talking about. I told her no and asked what this was about. She then broke down crying even harder and started accusing me of sexual assault and of E's involvement when we were children. She claimed E had told everything to my sister, who then told my mother and my aunt. E supposedly told them that when she was 9 and I 16, she was playing in my room, I started feeling her under my clothes, and I was kissing her. My mother screamed at me to say something, anything, but I was so stunned I couldn't speak. It all felt so absurd I thought it must be some sick joke or misunderstanding. The last thing I remember saying was that it wasn't true, that E was lying. But then she kept going, saying E had given detailed descriptions of where and how it happened, and kept asking, "Did you do this? Did you do that?" I just kept yelling no in response, trying to deny everything. It all ended with my mom putting me on speakerphone, and both her and my dad saying they wanted nothing to do with me and instructing me never to contact them again. Later that same day, 2 of my sisters texted me, calling me disgusting, before blocking me on everything. I know it sounds unbelievable, but after that call, I took a long, cold shower. I still don't fully understand why. Once I calmed down, I started calling and texting everyone I could think of, including E. No one answered. Those who hadn't blocked me quickly did so. The only reply I received was from my father, who told me to stop bothering them and said they needed time to heal. That was 9 years ago. Since that day, I haven't spoken to any of my family members. Saying that this F'd me up is an understatement. I was in a mental fog for weeks, hardly eating, barely functioning. It didn't help that this all happened right before I was supposed to defend my bachelor's thesis, and I was under immense stress already. Fortunately, my co-writer noticed that something was off and took control of the situation, helping me focus on my defense and handle the tougher parts. Without him, I'm sure I would have failed. Naturally, no one attended my graduation, and what followed was the beginning of the worst period of my life. I spent that first year in a haze, expecting the police to arrive at my door at any moment, arresting me for sexual abuse. I couldn't land any jobs, so I survived on my savings. I drank excessively and used oxy to escape the pain. My resentment and anger grew. I became violent and volatile. The only thing stopping me from hurting anyone was that nobody was around at the worst moments. I remember smashing a glass once, and my neighbor called the cops. I managed to convince the officers I had just dropped it, and they left. Instead of sleeping, I spent sleepless nights planning how I could hurt E and make sure no one ever found out, thinking about worse things I could do, even though I hated myself for it. By late 2015, I finally secured my first real job in my field. That's when things started to shift. I threw myself into work, which gave me a sense of normalcy, something to focus on. Recovery was slow, but I managed to drink less and smile more. I lived cheaply but earned good money, and I started rewarding myself with small gifts, VR headsets, motorcycles, Lego, anything that kept me going. Last year, I moved out of my rundown apartment into a small house. It was an old dream of mine to have a garage and a garden to tend to. That move boosted my mood even more. Still, I have issues, been on antidepressants for several years. They help, but not in a joyful way. They just replace dark thoughts with flat, dead ones. Trusting others has become nearly impossible. I've only gone on 2 dates with 2 different women, and honestly, it's hard to speak normally when I'm nervous or in that situation. When a woman I was seeing asks about my family, I don't know what to say. They accused me of a heinous crime, and we're not talking anymore. Sounds horrible, but it's the truth. The only woman I truly communicate with regularly is my therapist, whom I like a lot. A few days ago, I received a text from my mother. I hesitated, staring at it for hours before finally opening it. When I did, I saw a second message. They said hi, mentioned how long it's been since we last spoke, that they miss me, and wanted to know how I was doing. They wrote a long message about my sisters and how my nieces and nephews are growing up, things I didn't even realize I was an uncle of. They added that they love me and always will, Mom and Dad. The second message acknowledged that I might not want to talk after everything, but asked me to listen. They explained that last month, I was brought up at a family gathering. E had downplayed everything that had happened, even claiming nothing occurred and that she just had a bad dream. We were all stunned. When we last spoke, we only wanted to protect E, so we did what we thought was right. They admitted that what she did was wrong, and they're angry at her. They've contacted everyone they knew to tell the truth. They want to speak with me and my sisters, and they want me to meet their families. They asked me to write back if I could find it in myself to forgive them. That's where I am now. I haven't responded yet, but they probably see I've read the messages. Honestly, I'm seething, old memories are flooding back, and I don't want to forgive them. I wouldn't trust myself in the same room with them at this point. Part of me wants to call them and unload everything, guilt, anger, pain, until they hit their lowest point. Then, I'd dedicate my life to making my cousin's life as miserable as mine was. The other part wants to ignore them and stick with my decent life, my motorcycle, my garden, my peace of mind. I have no real friends, just coworkers I barely talk to. I even called my therapist's clinic, but she's on vacation for weeks. I don't want anyone but her. That leaves me with strangers online. So, I ask myself, what's the next step? Should I ignore them and keep things as they are? Or should I answer? And if I do, what do I even write? I'm pretty sure meeting in person would be a terrible idea for now, but honestly, I don't see how my life gets better by revisiting these old wounds. It might sound embarrassing, but I still dream about the day they apologize, about them falling to their knees and kissing my feet. Now, texting feels so hollow, so meaningless. It's been about 3 months since I last posted that story. A lot has changed, some for the better, some for the worse. First, Eve remains a huge unresolved hole in my life. About a week after my family sent those messages, she reached out with a long apology text. I couldn't believe my eyes. She started talking about her mental health issues, saying she's been struggling with them for years, almost as if she was trying to justify her actions. She claimed she needed help, and her parents were helping her get it. That felt like total BS because I knew E as a bright, radiant girl until that terrible day in 2014. Her message seemed like an excuse, and her apology was the shortest, most insincere thing I'd ever read. My plan was to keep pushing forward, to slowly rebuild my life and improve bit by bit. But seeing her message broke my patience. I responded, and I tore into her with every vile word I could muster. The message I sent said, "You think your mental problems are bad? Try being torn away and excommunicated from your family for 10 years, starting when you were barely an adult. See how much worse your mental health becomes. I am still trying to cope with all this, and the last thing I need is the person responsible for my suffering feeding me excuses. My relatives may have been in the dark, but you knew the truth all along, and it never crossed your mind to say anything sooner. You're lucky I didn't take my own life. Maybe my parents and siblings are different, but I will never forgive you for the irreversible damage you've done to me and my relationships. Rot in hell, and never contact me again." She hasn't responded, but I can see she read it, probably took the hint. The good news? I also responded to my parents. Nothing lengthy, just a brief message. We actually took most of the conversation over the phone. Hearing their voices again was strange. They used to make me feel safe, but after everything, it was a different feeling entirely. At first, I hated it. The sour memories flooded back from the last time I spoke to them. Their voices had been screaming at me for things I didn't do. The call lasted about 3 to 4 hours. It was difficult, both for them and me, but it was also the most productive conversation we'd ever had. I thought they'd give me a string of excuses just like E. But to my surprise, they apologized repeatedly and admitted they'd been wrong. They said it had been weighing heavily on them all these years, and now, with the truth finally out, they didn't know how they could live with themselves. The hardest part was when I asked why they didn't believe me or listen to their own son. They told me they struggled immensely. E had crafted her story so convincingly that they felt they had no choice but to believe her. I told them they should have tried harder to help me instead of cutting me off. They admitted they knew that, but after a year or two, they felt it was better not to contact me, fearing things would only worsen. That made me angry. They're supposed to be my family. Who cares what kind of person I am? I am your son, and that should come first. In the end, we agreed to stay in contact, not in person yet, just gradually rebuilding trust. While I still harbor a lot of hate, I believe things can improve. That's why I feel some hope. Since that call, we check on each other more frequently, and our conversations are slowly returning to what they once were. Maybe I'll visit someday, but I don't know when or how it'll go. How do I greet or hug the people who threw me out of their lives? Final part. Hey everyone, I've got another update on my situation with E and the whole alleged essay. It's been 4 or 5 months since my last post, and a lot has happened, some better, some worse. First, many people suggested I sue her or take her to court. While I agree her actions were unforgivable and heinous, I don't think that would do any good now. This has been a decade in the making, and I just want it to be over. Going to court would cost me thousands I simply can't afford, and I keep thinking, she never took the case to court either. Maybe that's not a valid reason, but it's a thought I have. I'm still in contact with my parents, and you won't believe it, they visited me about a week ago. They also cut contact with E, and I feel like her getting the same treatment I endured is a form of punishment, almost like being sued. The visit went smoothly. I haven't seen the rest of my family yet because I want to take things slow, but we shared a nice dinner. How was I supposed to greet the people who tore my normal life apart? Surprisingly, it went better than I expected. I thought I'd be overtaken by hate, but instead, I felt a strange sense of relief when I saw them. Maybe because seeing them meant my life might be returning to something close to normal, like it was before everything changed. I didn't hug them until after the conversation, which was pretty intense. I didn't mean to lash out or attack them, but I had to make them understand just how much pain they caused me. At some point, my mother cried because of the details I shared about my darkest times. They said they knew they couldn't undo what happened, but they wanted to look forward. They even suggested coming home for Christmas and seeing the rest of the family. I told them I wanted to take things slow, but I might be open to it someday. While I'm still conflicted, that feeling of hatred is gradually fading. Overall, I feel like a better person, and I think the weight of those 10 years had dragged me down. Now, without that burden, I feel lighter. I've started dating again and met a great girl, someone I'm slowly starting to get serious with. Life's definitely getting better. Who knows what the next 10 years will bring after all this? For everyone listening, please take my story as a reminder. Things do get better, even if it takes a long time.